Amy Brenneman, you play Lori Garvey, a member of the Guilty Remnant cult in HBO's The Leftovers. Given how much secrecy there is on the show, even in the making of the show, what was your process of trying to get into this, very unique character?
It was a pretty unique process for me. Mostly because last season I didn't have any dialogue. So, I could glean who Lori was from the actions and that kind of thing. But you figure most of the time you're playing a character, you have lines, you have language to sort of explain who you are. So the process sort of evolved where I would get a script and it would be pretty incomprehensible to me. And Damon Lindelof would write things like, Lori shows up, she looks menacing, we have no idea what she's thinking. So I would call him up and I would say, well, I need to know what she's thinking. So let's figure out what she's thinking. And then it was almost like I was a silent movie actor because he would talk to me and I would scribble things down and to give all the stuff that you normally would have gotten in lines, frankly. So it was pretty wonderful, pretty unique.
You mentioned that, of course, it's a silent role. Members of the Guilty Remnant cult take that vow of silence. Was that a new experience for you? Had you ever had anything like that before as an actor?
Not in film or television. So at first I thought, oh, this is so bizarre. And, I didn't really, sometimes when you're getting going on a part, you look to other roles that you've done or roles that you've seen, or, we all sort of steal, and there really wasn't anything. Which was exciting as well. But then, I do come from theater, as most of us do, and I'm a dancer, and I realized, wow, on stage, I have actually played non-speaking roles and have really enjoyed that. So that helped me to sort of embrace the theatricality of it, if you will, because I think that lots of times in film and television, we're sort of in a more realistic world than we are in theater. In theater, we take license to be more abstract and to have different styles of communication. Film and television tends to be people talking in rooms. But I thought once I opened the door to a more theatrically minded part of my own creativity, then I was more comfortable. And I thought, well, I have done stuff that I can draw from.
Now, I've had a chance to talk to some of your co-stars about what it's like to be on a show where you don't necessarily know, where your character and story are going from week to week. How was it? Was it a steep learning curve trying to adapt to this, sort of secretive method that Damon Lindelof has?
At times it was fine. I mean, I do, I like in television that we sort of, our characters sort of live the way we humans live, namely, we don't know what's going to happen, right? In a movie or a play, you have the beginning, middle, and end. You can sort of craft it as such. Television, really, it's like, well, I don't know what's going to, Amy Brenneman, don't know what's going to happen today, so Lori Garvey doesn't know what's going to happen today. So I feel like I'd walked through some of that before. I would say, because I played such an incomprehensible and slightly unlikable character, I did find, which I was completely down for, but I needed to know why she was the way she was. So, in the middle of the season, it got frustrating for me not to know, because Damon kept saying, we're going to find out where she was at the moment of the departure and have a lot of sympathy for her. But he wouldn't tell me what that was. I think in part maybe they hadn't fully decided. But I remember calling him up and said, okay, now I'm frustrated and now I don't really know. I can't get behind her because I don't know, a sympathy for her. And then he said, oh, we just decided on her backstory of where she was at the departure. And he said, she was, pregnant and I was like, oh, that's all I need. It's so great that, and so there was a moment where I may not need to know what's coming up, but if you have a backstory, then I do need to know it for me to do my work. And he got that.
As you mentioned, later in the first season, we did get that episode where, we got the backstory from a lot of those characters, and finding out that Lori, of course, lost her unborn child in the departure. What was it like shooting that episode? Not just getting to flesh out Lori as a character more, but also getting to actually, speak while doing it.
It was incredible. I mean, we knew that episode 9 would be the day before the departure, and it was something we were looking forward to. I was especially, oh, we all were looking for. I mean, when you see Margaret Qualley as like an innocent, happy kid, you see this world, sort of, it's such a beautifully structured idea because they're on the Titanic and don't know it, but the audience has been steeped in this sort of apocalyptic headspace. So I loved it. I loved seeing, and Damon and I had talked about very early on, we spun quite an extensive backstory for Laurie and realized, she really was uber functional. It's not like she was a fringy person that got more fringy. She was absolutely functional. She was steering the ship. Justin Theroux's character was always a little bit more marginal and upset, but to see Laurie fully functioning in that type A modern working mom mode that we know and love was very, very moving. It was fun to pick out wardrobe. It was fun to see her in her home, and heartbreaking because you saw her before her break.
You mentioned your estranged husband on the show, played by Justin Theroux. After, of course, they split and she joins the Guilty Remnant, they have, a lot of these intense scenes where he's very, outwardly expressive with all of his emotional dialogue, and you have to sort of play off of him in silence. What was it like shooting those kinds of scenes with him where you don't really have that kind of traditional back and forth between actors?
It was amazing. I mean, I've always said this, and I said this to Justin that night. I mean, in the pilot, which is also so well structured, and you don't know how these people are connected, and you just see everybody's upset and at sea. And then there's the scene where he comes to the Guilty Remnant home and asks to see his wife, which, when you read that is like, and I didn't really know what to expect. I never know what to expect from other actors. That's why I love it. And he, as written, frankly, that scene was purely angry and frustrated. And Justin showed up with such a wide open, broken heart. It just totally took me aback. And I respond, even though, again, Laurie was written a little bit more stoic and unfeeling, I couldn't help but respond to him. And I remember writing Damon the next day, and I said, I think these people are not done with each other. And I said, I also think, even though on the page or maybe in your mind, Laurie was more, a good guilty remnant and not feeling. And me as an actor, me as an instrument, I'm a feeling responsive person. So I said, I think what we're going to be watching, if it's cool with you, is this person trying not to feel, right? So this feeling comes up. She's the next shrink. She's a shrink, right? So she's nothing if not an empath. So she's trying to cover. And that's why Patty gets so mad at her. It's like, don't feel, don't this. But I feel like that pilot moment was when so many things just organically presented themselves.
Over the course of that first season, where Laurie is kind of mysterious and not necessarily likable all the time, over the course of that season, as you got to play her more and learn more about her and her story, by the end of it, did you have a much greater sympathy for her than you did towards the beginning?
I did. I mean, yes. Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And I felt a lot of things. I mean, I felt like, because my job is to see the story from my character's point of view. Like, I always feel like, you picture the UN and all those people and their country, Botswana, United Nations, whatever. And it's like my job is to represent Laurie. And as you do, I don't feel as method as you just see it from that point of view, right? So it was really funny, sort of midway through the shooting, to realize, like, oh, I'm the villain of this piece. Like, I don't think of myself as the villain of this piece, but as a GR, like, people loathe me, they want me to go away, they hate me, so that was kind of funny because I don't usually play villain. So that was really interesting. But also, I feel like Damon and Laurie really freed me from the addiction to be likable. I think that as an actor, as a female, there's this fine line of sort of, I want people to like me. I want the man to choose me, you know, whatever the paradigm is. But I feel like all of playing Laurie chipped away at that. And then he was pitching this season to me, and where I'm such a badass, and I was awesome with it. Like, I feel like, oh, that's been sort of burned away, my need to be liked, which is really freeing as an artist.
Now, season 1 of the show took place in New York, but season 2 is moving the action to Texas. You know, we wouldn't want you to give anything away, of course, but how has the feeling changed of not only the locale and the story? You know, how have you been settling into this new season?
Well, I haven't done, I mean, full disclosure, I haven't really done too much because really the structure of this season is a little bit more going off of those episodes last year when we went into Chris Eccleston's story, Carrie Coon's story. You sort of dive deep rather than sort of servicing everybody every episode. So I have done some pre-production and obviously worked with the script and stuff, but I haven't been there too much. But I will say, kind of everything is a little bit better in terms of, for me anyway, you know, I've left the GR. I'm trying to think of what I'm allowed to say, that I have left the GR. So, and I just understand Laurie a lot better. So I'm just more comfortable in my skin. And then it's fun to be, you know, we were shooting outside of New York last year. The logistics were just such a mess, and it was just because of weather. And so I feel like it's sort of nice for this job for everybody to be on location. None of our actors are from Austin, so we're sort of bonded in a way that only locations can do. And I think we know, you know, I just, as I watched the shows once they were completed with the rest of the world, I was really blown away by Damon's vision and his ability to balance a very bleak world with a lot of humanity. I was amazed at how sympathetic all the characters were. And so I feel like I trust him and the team even more. So that as a performer, it's like, oh, good. I'm just going to go for it, go for the ride, and not be wondering what this was. We kind of know what it is now.
Over the course of playing this character, you know, from season 1 and now going into season 2, you know, was there ever a moment where you're reading a script and obviously you don't know what's going to happen next necessarily, but, you know, there's a development for Laurie that maybe, you know, took you especially by surprise? Was there like one particular that you just sort of like, whoa?
I mean, almost every episode. I mean, you know, like when my daughter shows up, like I myself have a 14-year-old daughter, and it was so hard for me. I mean, that probably was sort of the biggest challenge. You know, I can listen, people get divorced, you know, that was like, okay, well, I get how Laurie, but like the suffering, and Chris Silka, you know, plays Tom, my son. He's older, he's sort of off on his own adventure. I mean, the suffering of the teenage daughter in high school and seeing Margaret's storyline and like imagining that Laurie as the mother was in town and not helping. That was a continual like, wow, I don't get this, I'm gonna play it. But by the end I did. I mean, I came to some decisions about, because what's interesting is, you know, episode 9 of last year was the day before the departure, then the day of the departure. And then what we realized is that Laurie didn't join the Guilty Remnant for about 2.5 years. I mean, there was about 2.5 years where she hung in there, and then realized that she was not able to function in the world. So those 2.5 years started to become very interesting to me. And, you know, because Damon and I hadn't really explained too much, I could impose the suffering that she must have felt in order to make this decision to join the GR, which she must have thought was the best decision she could make. So by the end, I was, you know, inside her and sympathetic, but that was, yeah, the abandoning mother thing is always a tough pill to swallow.
You're a TV veteran, and you've had, you know, kind of a rare opportunity, you know, that you consistently land these, you know, regular roles on a string of successful shows, you know, NYPD Blue, Judging Amy, Private Practice, and, you know, The Leftovers is obviously a very different kind of show than those. Is it a markedly different experience, you know, as an actor on set?
Not on set, but I think as a TV show, it's completely different. I mean, you know, there's, you know, with those other shows, I mean, especially for me, Judging Amy and Private Practice, I mean, part of the the experience of being on a TV show is a consistency. You know, you kind of know who the regulars are. You're in the same locale. You're in the same sets. This is much more to me like a movie, you know. I mean, I used to make these movies, and probably will again at some point, but that had very long schedules, you know, 6 months, like Heat took 6 months to make. This feels like that to me, you know. It's just more like a movie or a mini series. I mean, on set, it's the same. I mean, it's people trying to do excellent work. I mean, I will say this, that, you know, I feel like in Private Practice, we always wanted to be a little bit more gritty than ABC would let us, or me speaking. You know, the glamour thing is not the thing that I'm most interested in. So to that degree, like being on Private Practice, I would sort of chafe a little bit, and I want to be more stripped down and wear less makeup and the whole deal. But then you get kind of used to being protected, you know, because, and then in HBO, it's like they want you to go as far off. They want as much grit. They want more grit than I'm even comfortable with, you know? So in that way, it didn't feel like, oh, we're going to protect you in this TV world. It's like a movie. Like, your value is how far you can go for it and how deeply committed you are to these extreme stories.
Having done a lot of TV, you know, you've also had the experience of saying goodbye to some long-running shows. You know, you did Judging Amy for 6 years, and then Private Practice again for 6 years. You know, of course, even under the best of circumstances, no show can last forever. But, you know, how hard is it to let go of these characters and the casts and crews that you've settled into for so long?
Yeah, I think every situation is different. 6 years is a nice long chunk. And so I think in both of those cases, I was okay. I mean, Judging Amy was, I mean, I started a family. You know, I was pregnant twice on the, I always say, like, I went into that show as a, you know, without not being a mom, I came out with two. So in that way, I just needed, you know, those are 20, the landscape has changed somewhat too, because Judging Amy, we used to do 23, 24, you know, at least 22. I was just talking to a friend of mine who works on How to Get Away with Murder with Viola, and Viola said, I only want to do 15. And you know what? I think that's a great choice, because I think as cable has shown us, you know, shorter orders, you can craft each episode more. People are into binge watching now. So I think when you do 6 years of at least 22 episodes, that's a lot of time with the character. So I always miss the folks. But, you know, I was super pregnant with my second child when Judging Amy was canceled. And because I was also a producer on that, I was okay. I was relieved. I was like, I gotta regroup. You know, again, this is 10 episodes, and not all of it. Nobody's in every episode, so the demands are different.
Of the past characters that you've played, you know, on TV, you know, is there anyone that you found that you were especially attached to, you know, maybe more than the others, who you'd love to revisit if you ever had the opportunity?
Well, I mean, I think creating Judging Amy was an utterly unique experience, and one, actually, now that my kids are older, I would like to do again, because I just remember thinking, like, I can do anything. Like, if I said, hey, I want an episode, not having to do with, like, I had the power, but Judging Amy, or Amy Gray, was such a full character that I got to be, you know, funny and sexy, and I got to be a daughter, and I got to be a mother. And so almost like any part of my psyche that I wanted to explore, we did. And so just, it was so refreshing. It was the opposite of feeling like you were in a pigeonhole, like, okay, my character always has to be funny, or, you know. So that experience, I mean, both the character, who I loved so much, and the way I got to be partnered with Tyne and Tyne Daly, that lives in my heart. And also the, you know, I'm producing now a show on NBC that I'm not acting in as of yet, but the producing thing also gets very interesting to me, because you get to throw the party and contribute to the culture of a workplace, and just tell the stories that interest you.
You've gotten your fair share of awards attention also over the years. You were nominated for 2 Emmys for NYPD Blue, and then another 3 for Judging Amy. You know, as you mentioned, the work that goes into, you know, not only starring in, but producing a show, you know, was the recognition for Judging Amy that got, you know, not just for you, but, you know, also Tyne Daly, who, you know, she won an Emmy for that. You know, was that especially meaningful for you, since you were the star and also the producer?
Oh yeah, I mean, you know, because that show, and this is like not to be too, I don't know what, like cocky or something, but when I produce, like I'm not a producer by trade, right? I'm an actor by trade. So when I produce, it's like, I wanted to like do what is fun to me. Like it was, nobody said like, hey, you should do, law shows or in this. I mean, I went from the gut. I went from what I knew, my mom's a judge. It was so kind of my sensibility that I was blessed enough to meet up with Barbara Hall, who could write that. And then Tyne Daly, who's like the best acting partner in the world. But the freedom of it was like, we were just doing what we wanted to do. CBS was not a high priority. We went under the radar. So when that show took off, that was very gratifying. And also like a great thumbs up, like just do what you want to do. And people are going to like it and not like it, but you're going to find a lot of pleasure because it's your own sensibility.
Actors who are in series, when they go into the Emmys, they have to submit sample episodes of their best work to Emmy judges. Were you closely involved in that process of choosing the episodes that you competed with, or did you leave that more to producers?
Yeah, no. You, as any actor says, hey, I think, because you're going to remember the episodes more than anybody else. I mean, this one was interesting. Speaking of Emmys, this was interesting because I think I submitted two. I submitted episode 9 because I have a lot to do. But then I was like, hey, but that's what's sort of arguably Emmy worthy about Lori Garvey is the non-speaking, because that's sort of the high wire act. So you kind of think through like, all right, what would be most arresting and work that I'm proud of. But, with any actor, you're going to have those episodes that you remember like, oh, that was a great storyline that came out really well. So yeah, I mean, the actors are asked to submit their opinion anyway.
With the leftovers, you mentioned, episode 9, the backstory episode. So is that, the one you ended up going with, or did you end up going with one?
I think 2. I can't remember, but I think 9. But then I also think episode 5, the one when Gladys is stoned, and I sort of go off with Patty to that motel. Just again, you want to, because when you're supporting, you want to show the stuff that you're featured in. I think that's what I did. I have to go check.
Yeah, I'm not sure how that works all the time. I know in previous years, lead actors submitted 1 episode and supporting actors submitted 2, and they were sort of edited together. It seems like that's sort of ideal sometimes. Like you don't necessarily want to show this one snapshot. You want to show like a little bit of what you did and what you were proud of throughout.
Right. And I think in this particular case, part of what was really fun in episode 9 is just showing range, right? So that's another thing we like to show off as actors, and that's meaningful to Emmy people. So, it's very marked to see Lori post-departure and then pre-departure. That's just kind of a fun range to display.
Well, I want to wish you the best of luck on the Emmys and on season 2 of The Leftovers, which is coming up. Thank you so much for talking with me today.
Oh, it was a pleasure. Thank you for having me.